What's up, everyone? Kevin here from Skywatcher. Welcome to another episode of the What's Up Webcast. We do this every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, right here at the Skywatch USA YouTube channel. Cover everything from what's up in the sky to equipment to helpful tips and tricks. And of course, at the end of the month, we have a special guest to talk about their specialty in the field of astronomy. It is December 2025. Actually, it's December 5th, 2025. Year's over. So it went pretty quick. I think we could all agree about that. So this is our final What's Up for the month, for the year. And then we're going to start getting all the totems together and announcing the winners. I know last year or throughout the year, you guys have asked to see more of the totem picks. So I'll try to incorporate that back in next starting next month, and we'll try to do that throughout the year on showing maybe like the top 3 images, or like maybe like the top 3 winners picks for the month, and we'll showcase them, because after a while we're getting more and more entries and it gets really cumbersome to put every entry into the webcast presentation. Sorry, my sinuses just started freaking out a little bit ago, so my apologies. Well, if you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe, leave a like on the channel. Let us know we're doing a good job. If you have an idea for a future episode, you can email us at info@skywatchusa.com, title it What's Up. There's plenty of cool stuff to check out. So, and then we're always looking for new ideas, especially as we're going into the new year, new ideas for episodes. So don't be afraid to throw them our way. We'd be happy to get some thoughts from all of you. If you want to stay up with what's going on here at Skywatch, you can head over to skywatchusa.com, hit subscribe and save up at the top. You can join our email list and stay in touch with what's going on here, and all the fun stuff that's, happening. Got a lot of cool stuff hopefully coming out next year. Of course, we'll have episodes that cover any new product launch, but we just had our end of the year sales meeting where we showcase all the new stuff to our team, what's coming out. There's some fun, exciting things that we'll be able to show you guys hopefully pretty soon. And this is where you're going to find out about it first in detail. A couple other things real quick. If you want to support the channel, you can head over to skywatcher.threadless.com, pick up some cool swag. Got all kinds of fun stuff there. You can always head over to skywatchusa.com and pick up our equipment. We've got a ton of stuff on sale right now, so if you want to get something for the holidays, jump on it. We've got all kinds of fun things up there. We have tubes on sale. I think we even have promos. Our mounts are still on sale. Sorry, my nose is just a mess this morning. All kinds of stuff on sale, so you can get a cool deal on something. And then you can also head over to our used area. We've got all kinds of stuff available for really steep discounts over there. So pick that up and check it out. So yeah, all kinds of stuff there. Have you made an episode about the Herschel 400? I have not. That's actually a pretty decent idea too. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Good topic. So thanks for throwing that in there. I will have us add that to the list. So, okay. Let me get some of this out of the way. So let's talk about the bright thing in the sky. That's the moon, the big golf ball in the sky. New moon is at the end of the month, December 20th. So for Christmas, if you know somebody who's getting a telescope, we should have a little baby crescent moon rising in the east. I should probably check that real quick. What does Christmas night look like for this year? Now, I understand not everybody celebrates Christmas. That's perfectly fine. But it is a big gift giving time. So I just want to see. Oh, yeah, we'll have a very nice moon for that. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, actually. But new moon, the dark month or the dark weekend of the month is going to be around December 20th, which just happens to also be Saturday and Sunday. So if you are looking to get out and get a very dark winter's night, you're going to be doing that on the 20th and the 21st. And the 21st is the winter solstice. So that's when, or winter solstice, winter equinox. I get them mixed up all the time. That'll be the longest night of the year as well. So if you're heading out to dark skies, that's going to be your weekend. Dress warmly because it is cold now. We're officially about to dive into winter towards the end of the month. And then, of course, full moon. Full moon was actually last night. I'm sure you saw the big bright thing in the sky, December 4th. That was the cold moon. And it gets its name from the Native American tribes up in the northeastern region of the country. This was when the cold weather has finally arrived, so thus the name Cold Moon. So not incredibly out of the box, but every full moon does have a wide variety of different names. I like to use Farmer's Almanac for all this, so if you want to head over there, check that out. You can learn all the different names of the full moons. It's a really good thing to have if you're doing outreach events and you want to talk about like what the full moon is for the month. It's just a fun little fact tidbit that you can throw into it. So, question: how bad is dew for mirror and lens coating? My scopes are getting dewed over every time I go out in the winter months. Most optics nowadays have really hard coatings on them. Most mass-produced mirrors use aluminum as their main coating source, but a lot of them have an overcoat on it. Could be quartz, could be something else, but there is an overcoat over the aluminum. So the mirror coatings are actually pretty well protected. Lens coatings nowadays are really durable as well. So dew will happen, unfortunately. Even here in the desert, we do get dew occasionally. It's not that big of a deal. But we just had a lot of rain the last few weeks, and there was a couple nights a couple weeks ago that were just wet and gross. Now it's nice and bone dry again, so dew's not a big deal. But I wouldn't say dew is necessarily going to damage your optics. A lot of the coatings that are used today are extremely durable. But I would recommend using some kind of preventative measures, bare minimum like a dew shield, especially if you're using like a refractor or a Cassegrain, like a Mac or a Schmidt. You want to try and keep that off because a lot of things that can happen is you get dust on your optics from just general use. And that's going to happen. I will let you know that your optics don't need to be in this immaculate, perfect condition. They will never be perfect. These are made to be used outside. Obviously, they're not made to be kept outside on long periods of time, but they are made to be used outside. So they're durable. But you don't need to be a perfectionist about it. Optics are going to get dusty. It happens. But when you get moisture involved, it can clump up the material and get it to stick. And sometimes it can cause staining to the coatings. I haven't found that it really messes up the view in any particular way. It just doesn't look nice. And it can affect the resale value if you're worried about that. But just do your best for preventative measures. Dew shields. Obviously, if you're using the telescope and it's dewing over, it's going to screw up your view because it's going to fog up the main optic and you're not going to get to see anything. So do your best to handle it. Dew shields, light shrouds. You can even make longer dew shields if you need to reduce the amount of time or increase the amount of time before it dews. And then, of course, dew heaters. I am probably the wrong person to ask about dew heaters living in the desert. I see it as more of a warming belt than anything else. But honestly, I've never messed with a dew heater. I just haven't needed to. It's not an issue usually here in the desert. But there are plenty of people online. You can check Cloudy Nights. There's Facebook groups. If you have questions on dew heaters, there are more qualified people than I to answer that question. Even some of our dealers could do a lot better answering your question on that, but it shouldn't harm anything. Ultimately, the telescope should be fine. You might have to clean the optics off. Just be careful and make sure you know what you're doing, but it shouldn't damage anything. Hopefully that answers your question. A little bit of a long-winded answer there, but planets. So if you've been out recently, you've probably started to see some of the planets up, but if you don't know, This is Stellarium. Stellarium is a free program that you can download onto your computer. I also think it comes in app form for your phone. I haven't messed with that version. Stellarium's a great free planetarium software, though. It's fun to use it. It's easy to navigate. But if you're a beginner and you just want to kind of see what's up in the sky, it's a good thing to work with as well. So right now, our big planet is Saturn. Saturn is really nice and high in the southern sky, pretty much right after the sun goes down. It's really well placed. It's kind of right in the middle of its season. The rings are still edge on, or really close to edge on. They are starting to open up a bit more, but they're pretty much edge on. You can get some really cool views of some of the moons. Titan, I think Rhea has been visible, and a handful of others are what I've seen recently when going out and observing it. But because the way the rings are, it's very easy to see some of those extra moons because they're all right, nice and aligned with the rings. So that is something to be said. But not far from the planet Saturn, if you want to go a little bit further, is the planet Neptune. Those are kind of our two well-placed planets at the moment, at least for the early part of December. If you're new or you've never observed Neptune before, it is a bit of a challenge, especially compared to some of the bigger, brighter planets. I even personally don't show Neptune all that much, because it looks like a little tiny blue ball. It's what I would start classifying as a concept object. That's a term I coined and like to use on certain targets. I use it on objects that don't have this big, fascinating, sexy display for the nighttime sky. It's not like the Orion Nebula or this big grand object. It's a little dot. And it's what you're looking at. It's the concept of what you're looking at that's impressive. It's not so much the view. So I call like quasars or concept objects, but I would probably throw Neptune as kind of starting that, because it's a little tiny blue dot. Even in like a C14 or a 28-inch Dob, some of the scopes we've played with recently, it's not a super impressive planet to show people, but it's still cool to see it. So, but it's not far from Saturn. So if you happen to be in the area and you want to try it, Neptune is usually within reach for most telescopes. So it's not a bad object to look at. It's just not the most stunning object to look at. So those are our major two planets at the moment. And then flipping around, let's push this a little bit later to around 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, we've got Orion starting to rise. Our winter objects are coming, but the Pleiades is nice and high, and not far from the Pleiades, or M45, is the planet Uranus. Uranus is actually, I think Uranus is kind of cool because it still looks like a planet. When you point the telescope to that area of the sky where it's at, you can identify that it is indeed different than the stellar points in the field of view. So you're going to have a bunch of stars, and you're going to notice there's this one that's more of a ball. It's kind of like this baby blue color. But the fact that it looks like a little sphere, it looks like a little bit of a planet, allows you to identify it more within the field, where Neptune is even further, and it's right on that line where it just doesn't resemble a planet too much. It's a little underwhelming, unfortunately. But Uranus, I think, is neat because it still looks like a planet, even though it's way out there. And of course, if you're showing it to the public, you're going to get 50,000 Uranus jokes while you're showing it. But people still tend to think it's neat because you can identify that it is, in fact, a little ball. Let's see. What is your opinion about vintage scopes? I'm getting the best views, the moon and planets from 50+ year old 60 millimeter Pentax. It's funny you should bring up vintage. I recently got into vintage and antique telescopes myself. A good friend of mine, he grew up in the 50s and the 60s. He grew up with Sears and Unitron and the like vintage Tasco stuff. And I've always kind of admired that, but from a lot of my older friends who grew up with that. because that's what they dreamed about. And there's always been this kind of unique historical romance-esque of using those telescopes. There's just nothing crazy about them. We don't care what the glass type is. We don't want the Strel ratio of it. There's a nice simplicity about using some of these vintage and antique telescopes. They're generally very long focal length telescopes. Like my vintage one now, it's a 4-inch Unitron. And we should probably do an episode on some of these, because a lot of these vintage and antique telescopes, like a Clark refractor, which I picked one of those up recently too. There's something really cool about just spending time with an instrument like that. And that's obviously, these books back here are kind of part of that vintage history as well. So getting vintage and antique stuff is really cool. But it kind of, what I like about using vintage stuff is it kind of makes you appreciate the modern stuff even more, because it shows you where we came from. But ultimately, at the end of the day, answering your question here, using a 50-plus-year-old Pentax refractor, at the end of the day, we kind of need to push all the crap out of the way, all the noise, I would say. There's something special about just going out in your backyard and observing with your telescope. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a tiny little beginner refractor. It could be a big C14 or whatever. But the important part is that you're out and you're having a good time with the hobby that you enjoy. And whatever you make that, whatever way that happens for you, great. At least you're out doing it. I know I work for Skywatcher, but at the end of the day, I would rather you be out enjoying the hobby with whatever equipment that you happen to have. That's it. I just want you to enjoy the hobby. And if you're getting amazing views of the planets with a vintage telescope, awesome. I've had some amazing views through my 4-inch Unitron and through the 4-inch Clark refractor that I have at the moment. Are they this big, 6 or 8-inch APO refractor? No, absolutely not. But it's just cool to use some of this stuff. And we should probably do an episode about this, but I would actually challenge any one of you who hasn't spent time with a vintage telescope, go get one. You can get them for pretty cheap now, especially if you just find like a Unitron optical tube or something like that. If you get one that's like mint condition with all the stuff, that's a bit more of a collector's piece. But there is something really cool, and sometimes slowing yourself down and not worrying about the latest and greatest thing. And we can all appreciate that. We all have something that we want, but there's something really cool about having a vintage telescope and just going out and enjoying it for what it is. And that's it. So if you're getting really good views with your telescope, that's all that matters. And the fact that it's a vintage Pentax, these are not bad telescopes at all. They're just not these big, sexy APO refractors. But a long focal length refractor is a really neat telescope to use. So more power to you. Have you ever observed the Galilean moons as disks rather than dots? If so, did you see any detail? Once. I have seen detail on Ganymede. This was a long time ago, actually. Probably close to, I don't even remember. Way before COVID, I think is when it was. Anyway, we were doing an outreach event with my friends and a group that I was working with years ago at this point. I had my old 16-inch Dob, which I don't own anymore, but it had a really nice Swayze 16-inch f4.5. It was a Meade Starfinder mirror, and it was refigured by Swayze. We had amazing seeing one night and just kept stacking on the power. I don't even know what we pushed up to, but there were so many festoons and knots and all kinds of stuff inside of Jupiter's bands. It was super impressive. But Ganymede actually showed detail, like gray kind of molting detail. It wasn't anything like particular, but you could tell that it was no longer a dot. That was really cool. And I don't think by memory I don't think I've ever been able to repeat that. It was just one of those super special nights where everything was clicking and it was great. And those nights are so few and far between, but it is doable. It is possible. It really comes down to seeing conditions. The telescope is acclimated and everything's just working. But it's a really impressive one. I submitted an image for October Totem. I never heard back from Skywatcher email 4 times asking about the status. Never got a response. How do I know if my image was accepted? I will double check the totems. With the holidays and everything going on, everything's been kind of crazy and messy around here. Just a lot going on, but I will go back and we'll double check. And if we missed it, we have patches. We'll get you taken care of. Don't worry too much about it. I apologize for the delay though. But we'll get you squared away. Did any owner of a Wave 150i mount fixed it as... did any owner of a Wave 150i mount fix it to a ZWO PE200 peer extension? I have. So the Wave 150i's little foot, like its dovetail foot, I don't know what you would really call it, but the block on the bottom of it, that foot is actually the same diameter as an AM5's foot. I've actually put the Wave 150 on top of ZWO's peer extension and just locked it down with their little levers. It worked fine. I didn't have any issue with it. But it's pretty secure. I like puck. Yeah, that's a way better term. Puck. Yeah, there you go. The little mounting puck on the bottom of the mount. It does fit on there, so it works fine. Let's see. Sorry, let's go back to planets really quick. Questions are always great. Good time of the month to do it. So you do have Uranus up by the Pleiades right now, and then Jupiter is starting to rise right around 8:30 right now in the evening. It's in Gemini. But as the month continues, especially as we get closer to the end of the month and the new year, Jupiter will becoming naked eye easily visible as it rises in the east. So pretty soon we're going to have Jupiter, we're going to have Uranus, we're going to have Neptune, Saturn. All that's going to be visible. So we're going to have a really good end of the year if you're into planets. And then if you're wanting to get kind of a little moment, we'll have the Moon and Saturn on the 26th. So this will be a really good holiday season for anybody who's getting some kind of telescope. Because the nice thing about the way the planets are right now, especially this year where the moon is at, is that we're going to have a lot of people who are getting their first telescope or they're getting their first serious telescope for the holidays. And the nice thing is they're going to have a lot of cool things to go out on Christmas night or whatever holiday you believe or follow. This time of year, if you're getting some kind of cool telescope, there's a ton of cool stuff that you're going to be able to go see right around the holiday season. So awesome. But that's it for planets. Let's see. I am having a heck of a time getting my go-to pointing accurately with my EQAL55i using the SynScan app with my iPhone. Would I have better luck if I were to use a SynScan hand controller? You shouldn't. You can always email support@skywatchusa.com and you could give us a little bit more information of what's going on and why it's like what telescope are you using, what focal length are we working with, are you polar aligning, is all your information correct? A lot of basic stuff is what we're going to ask you, but we need to get caught up. I tend to prefer the hand controller personally, but that's because I like the tactile buttons. But I don't have any issues aligning the EQAL55i, but again, I'm not saying there isn't an issue. Clearly there's something going on, and we should be able to help you with that. But I would contact our Alex in support and see if we can actually help you with it a little bit more, but we'll need a little bit more detail of what's going on, and we'll see what we can do. There's a comment. I've recently had to turn to EAA to see anything here in the North Carolina. Even though I can see more than I could visually, I miss the connection with the sky had with Agua Dulce, California. Yeah. In really heavily light polluted locations, I do find a lot of people are starting to move over to electronically assisted astronomy, or EAA. And there's a lot of options now. Obviously, you have smart scopes like the C-Star and the Origin and EV scope. That could be EAA. You could be hooking up a ZWO or some kind of camera and doing live stack imaging. But the cameras and the technology with the filters nowadays allows us to see a lot more than our eye would be. And in heavily light polluted locations, that can actually be a really important factor to do it. And even like the Pegasus Smart Eye is a really nice piece of kit to do EAA with. But yeah, it's hard to go from the darker skies of the desert to really heavily light polluted locations. And I feel you there. All right, the sun. So the sun has got a lot going on right now. But as I say every month, here's the bullet points. You can check them all out there. But activity on the sun can increase, but it's slow. It's a great thing to sketch. It's a great thing to image because it's super dynamic. It's always changing. And if you haven't had a chance to get out and look at the sun recently, let me go to space weather. There's a bunch of sunspots and these humongous ones right here. You have 4298, 4294, 4296, and of course a peppering of other little guys up there. But there's some big stuff to go look at. And as long as you have a safe solar filter to use, you can get a really nice view of what's going on. I've been actually observing these the last few days just on like lunch break, and it's really impressive. And you don't need anything special. This is really good in white light. You don't need a really high-end H-alpha telescope. That certainly does help add to the dynamics of it, but the sunspots are super impressive right now. So if you have a nice refractor or some kind of telescope, you don't need anything majorly big, go out and check it out. I should try getting some eclipse classes and seeing if these are big enough to see without any optical aid. But if you are observing the sun, like I say all the time, please do so safely. Make sure you're using the proper solar filters. Don't Frankenstein something together. Please take it seriously so you don't hurt yourself. And then for H-alpha, I always recommend going to Gong. If you don't know how to get there, just type in GONG space H-alpha into Google and it pops up. But I haven't had a chance to get out and look at it. But today looks like there's some good stuff. Obviously, the sunspots have a lot of active regions around them. There's a nice filament here, some nice prominences. So there's a little bit going on up there today. Nothing major unless one of these major sunspots decides to fire off a huge flare. And then we could get some really interesting aurora here in the next week. But we definitely want to be watching these sunspots and seeing what's going on there. There's a lot of cool stuff happening up on the sun right now. And if you want to know more, we have a bunch of episodes talking about solar filters, like how to be safe with a solar filter, what types of solar filters, what you're seeing with them. So there's all kinds of cool stuff that you can actually go back and check out if you want to see some of those episodes. But there's a lot going on the sun right now, and highly recommend getting out there and checking it out. Meteor showers. We do have a couple meteor showers right now. Let me bring this back up. I like to go here, the American Meteor Society, or amsmeteors.org. This is where I get all the meteor shower information. So rather than just putting it up on the screen, I'll just open up the website. So right now we do have the Northern Taurids going on right now. That's 11th through the 12th is its peak. But we are going to have a bright moon to contend with. And then we also have the Geminids. So that's 13th through the 14th. The moon's not as bright, but you still will have to navigate around it. But as you can see, there's several. And then, of course, we have the Ursid meteor shower at the end of the month, which is peaking on the 21st. That one's going to be really, really well placed because the full moon is on the 20th. So very thin crescent moon setting very early in the evening. So if you are heading out to darker skies, the meteor shower ideal position for meteor showers is going to be the Ursid meteor shower at the end of the month. And then you have the Quadranid meteor shower, but that kind of picks up at the end of the month. And then moves over into January, but we're going to deal with a super bright moon on that one as well. So a lot going on right now for meteor showers, but if you want to know more about it, you can head out to amsmeteors.org, and this website's got all kinds of information on meteor showers and how it works and fun stuff like that. Comets. Obviously, we've been really busy with comets lately. I think a lot of them have kind of moved on at this point, although Atlas is one that people are taking a look at. That's what I didn't open. I knew I forgot one tab. Let me bring this up. Oh, I did have it open. My bad. Here it is. Cometchasing.skyhound.com. If you're looking for comets and you want to know more, this is a great website to go get all kinds of information. Right now, 3i Atlas is the big one that people are asking about. I've seen a little bit on it. Obviously, there's been a lot of conversation leading up to it that it's really weird and all this stuff. I haven't even tried to look at it yet, but it is easily visible right now. So you can head out there and check it out if you want to see it. It looks like it's at 9.6 magnitude. So you could probably catch it in almost any telescope, but probably a larger telescope would be helpful if you want to resolve it a little bit more. And I'm sure cameras will take it down pretty easily. Oh, I'm sorry. This is T1 Atlas. We're talking about 3i Atlas down here. But yeah, 6-inch telescope. So there's a handful of comets that are up right now. But I think most of the big guys have kind of moved on. Comet R2 Swan is heading out. It's becoming a lot fainter. But yeah, so I like to go to this website to learn about comets, and it gives you the whole rundown of everything that you're really going to need to understand where they're at and which ones are worth it. It's always changing, so I highly recommend this website if you're interested to learn about comets. I like using the Gideon Van Buiten's website for comets. I will have to check that out. I've not heard of that one. Do you have a reference to one of your videos on how you align the heliostar during the day and let it track on a Wave 150i? I don't have a video specifically for a heliostar on a wave mount. You can, I think in Alt-Az mode, you can do a daytime alignment, and you can align on the sun there. If it's polar aligned, a lot of times I will just have it slew to the sun and let it track as good as it can with solar rate. But yeah, I don't have a video like right now off the top of my head to show you how to do it. But those are two ways to go about it. If you need any further help, you can come out and email support and we can try to assist you there. But those would be the two ways I can think of off the top of my head. You can either do a daytime alignment, which is available in Alt-Az mode only, or put it in equatorial mode, polar align it the best you can. Like when I do the sun and I'm using my wave mount, I'll adjust the latitude to wherever we're at. I'll roughly eyeball north, or I'll use a compass, and then I'll slew it to the sun. And sometimes I've even slewed it to the sun and then physically moved the mount until the sun is like, not with the hand controller, like physically move the mount until it's more aligned on the sun. And I find that actually helps too, especially because the wave mounts have those homing encoders. So send it home and then have it slew to the sun in equatorial mode, and then just shift the mount physically until it's in the field of view, and you can make some adjustments with the knobs. I find that works too. So obviously not as elegant as one might think, but that's what I've got. Deep sky. So there's a ton of stuff to look at right now. We still have a lot of the summer stuff setting, like Cygnus and Lyra are still up. So if you want to get a hold of the Ring Nebula or anything in Cygnus, that's all easily available right now. You can still get it in the early evening, but obviously everything now is moved over to the fall, and towards the early evening, we even have some of the winter stuff that's arising right now. But right now, if you want NGC 7293, the Helix, this is an Aquarius. It's a very large planetary nebula. You do need darker skies to get it. If you do have access to night vision, it's really impressive. And night vision, it's kind of creepy looking because it looks like an eye. But you can head out to darker skies. O3 or UHC filters. A UHC is ultra high contrast, if you're not familiar with it, especially because we're getting around the holidays and people might be not understanding what the equipment is. UHC filters are really helpful. Imaging, it's a pretty forgiving target, but it is a lot bigger than most planetary nebulas. If you're imaging like the Blue Snowball or the Ring Nebula or, you know, the Eskimo Nebula, most planetary nebulas, you're going to find are really itty bitty. This thing is huge in comparison to some of the other ones. So it's a cool one to find and go track down. And it's pretty receptive to narrowband. So if you're in town, so you can give it a try. It can get a little low in the southern sky if you're in more northern latitudes. So you might be more limited on the time that you can get it. But here in southern Arizona region, 33 degree latitude roughly, you've got some time on it. So give it a go. So, but it's a cool nebula to check out, and it's often overlooked because there's a lot of other popular stuff in the sky. But I would highly recommend checking out this if you could find it. Of course, for why am I drawing a blank? Globular clusters. I was stuck on planetary nebula. For globular clusters, the winter time really isn't the best time for globulars. Globular clusters are more commonly a summertime object, and that's because a lot of them form a halo around the core of the Milky Way. So there's really not a bunch of globulars visible in the winter and fall months, and even the spring. There's a collection of them here and there that are small, but one of the brighter ones that are visible this time of year and one of the easiest to catch is M15 up in Pegasus, about 35,000 light years away. I would say it's kind of like the M13 of fall. But again, there's not a lot of globular clusters this time of year. But M15 gets pretty high in the sky to see it. So, but it is something that you can see at the moment. There is another globular that I can never remember. It sits way down. It's a Messier one. There it is. M79 is the other globular that's up this type of year. And that's actually in a lower constellation in Lepus. It's down there. And it's a bit harder to find. It's about 42,000 light years away, but it's a little bit more dense and tiny compared to M15. And it sits low in the western or southern part of the sky. I think even, let me see what this is. Even about its max altitude for here in the desert, it only gets, it's like 32 degrees above the horizon. So it doesn't get very high here. And there's a couple NGC globulars that are up right now too. But M15 is going to be like your big, bright, stunning cluster. It's easy to get. It's high overhead because it's up in Pegasus. Even our friends up north in Canada are easily able to get it. But yeah, globular season is generally more of a summertime thing because most of them sit around the core of the Milky Way. And in the wintertime, we're looking away from the Milky Way. Core, I should say. So that one's cool. There is a lot of stuff going on in here other than the cluster. If you get out to dark sky sites, it has all this wispy nebulosity. And I just saw an image recently where there's even some hydrogen in there. So if you're getting to dark skies and you have the ability to just pound away imaging wise here, give it a go because there's some cool stuff hiding in there. But globulars overall are really forgiving. The cluster itself is easy to shoot in town. If you want to get some of the faint wispies in the background, you're going to need darker skies and probably more exposure time to do it. But the cluster itself, you could easily do in town. And globulars tend to be easy to process because they're condensed and they're stellar. And you don't have this faint wispy to deal with unless you're in darker skies. Another thing that's up right now, M31, the Andromeda Galaxy, about 2.5 million light years away. Big staple object for the fall. But you can really get it in any sky visually, although it looks like a little fuzzy smudge in most telescopes. But if you get to darker skies, you can start getting the extensions of the arms, and cloud or the dust bands start to come out, all kinds of cool stuff there. So Andromeda is a really cool target to go after. Some of the best views I've seen are actually in binoculars from dark skies, because you really get to see how big the extension is on all of this. So it's a very large galaxy to look at. Imaging wise, you can image it in town. It will take up a large portion of the field of view. I'm seeing more elaborate images come out with, hydrogen and oxygen and all kinds of detail that's hiding around here. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on around Andromeda. So you can try and see what you can dig out there, but it's a nice galaxy to go for. It's one of the easiest galaxies to see. So if you've got someone getting their first telescope for the holidays, or you just want to get out there and check out a galaxy, M31 is a good one. And it doesn't take much to get a nice picture of one, but if you really want to get all the extra detail, you're going to need to get to dark skies and really put some time on it. As for NGC 7331, this is more of a challenging object. Up in Andromeda, you have the Deerlick Galaxy, which is NGC 7331, which is actually this one, and has a bunch of little friends around it. And then you have Stephan's Quintet over here, which is a cluster of about 5 different galaxies. Here's the labeling on all that. There's a lot going on in the field. So getting out to darker skies can really be helpful if you're going to image it. But if you're going to observe it, you're probably going to want at least an 8-inch telescope, but more aperture, the better for galaxies. Stephan's Quintet, the best views I've actually seen are probably pushing up into the 18-inch plus aperture class, because you really want to be able to get into that cluster and break it all apart. So there's a lot of really cool galaxies that sit in there, but it's a galaxy cluster. And there's actually a bunch of galaxy clusters up in the nighttime sky, and they can be a really cool observing program if you're trying to track down some really off the beaten path stuff. But Stephan's Quintet and a handful of other ones are kind of your easier dip into observing galaxy clusters. But if you're going to start going after galaxy clusters, you're really starting to touch into the large aperture class of targets. So I would say bare minimum 12-inch. If you really want to get in there, you're going to be talking about 18 to 20-inch or larger telescopes to really start getting into the nitty-gritty of galaxy clusters and challenging galaxies, which is a lot of what the springtime sky is. But Stephan's Quintet is a good starting point to dip your toe into the deep sky, seriously far observing of galaxy clusters. So that's a good one to start with. M45, the Pleiades. I don't think many of us really need any kind of introduction to the Pleiades. Nice open cluster, looks great in binoculars. It's easily visible right now. The moon was right next to it like 2 nights ago, so it was really bright to look at, but it was kind of cool to see it. The nebulosity portion of the Pleiades can be challenging visually. You really need to be in dark sky sites and probably having something that's got some aperture on it, 5 or 6 inch or even bigger, to really start to get some of that light nebulosity coming in. Cameras obviously bring it home a lot more, being more sensitive. But it's a really cool nebulosity, and there's a lot of dust around this cluster as well. If you got really wide field, like one of the 135's lenses, or like a red cat with a big camera on the back or something like that, you can get a really wide field of view, and you get some really cool views of the region around this cluster, because there's a lot going on. A lot of dusty, nitty gritty stuff is in there. So there's a lot going on, but the Pleiades is really kind of the center point of that. And it's one of the easier objects in Taurus to actually go observe. Of course, there's also M1, the supernova remnant. There's Siamesis 147, which is a massive supernova remnant that's up in the horns, but really difficult object to observe. And if you're going to image it, it's a huge field of view. But there's a lot going on in Taurus, so something like that. But you really want wide field optics for this, and probably a pretty big camera sensor to get a good shot. This was an Esprit 150 with a full frame sensor at 1050 millimeter. And you can see it frames it pretty nicely, but it's not fully there. I would actually want to go even wider on this, like the Esprit 100, something around that 500 to 600 millimeters is a really nice class of telescope to handle something like this. But the Pleiades is a great object to go after right now, and it's fairly easy to work with, but there's a lot of very delicate, elegant nebulosity in the region. So just process. I would say from experience, you want to make sure you have really good flats for this, because the nebulosity, the deeper you go on it, stretches across the entire frame. And if you don't have good flats, it can really mess it up and it just won't look good. So good flats. And I would probably reserve this for a darker sky outing, because it's a reflection nebula. There's no filter that can help you here. You either get it or you don't. So it can be a challenge and easy at the same time. Of course, you have the double cluster. It's not in Aquila. It's in Perseus. I knew there was one hiding in there. 7,500 light years away. This is a really easy target to go after. It's a great outreach target. I really need to shoot it again because this picture isn't great. Focus isn't on. But this is an easy one to go after. I have seen some really deep shots of this with all kinds of nebulosity and cool stuff going on. So don't be afraid to shoot the double cluster, and you can really make it your own with all kinds of cool detail in there. So your mileage may vary. Just depends on how much time you want to spend on it. But the double cluster is a great object for outreach events. It's easy to see. People like it because it's got color to it. There's some red and orange stars in there. It's kind of a cool set of objects, and people tend to enjoy it, and it's an easy one to image. Of course, you have the Bubble Nebula, MGC 7635. This one can be challenging, and visually it is really challenging. You need dark skies for this. O3 or UHC filters can help, but a lot of times the only thing you can really see visually is the brighter out right portion of the bubble right here. I would probably say you need like at least an 11-inch, 10 to 11 inch for starters to get it. But the only time I've really had good luck with it is when we're talking 20-inch or larger. It wasn't until I got onto like a 25-inch Dob or my 28 or something big when it really starts to show. Imaging wise, it's one of my favorite objects. There's a lot of things going on in here. It's really forgiving with narrow band filters. You could just pound it with H alpha light. You could do some Hubble palette. You could do a lot of really crazy things with it, but it could be a really interesting object to go after. And there's a lot of things in the field of view, especially if you're using a really wide field system. It can get really interesting because you've also got the lobster claw, which is down here. You have M52 cluster, which is up here. The bubble, of course. You've got some really interesting little dark regions and reflection regions in here. There's a lot going on in the field. And if you wanted to get really elaborate, you could do a really deep dive into this with something fast like a RASA, or go real wide with a little refractor. There's a lot going on here, so you can kind of make it what you want. M33, another good galaxy that's up this time of year. It's closer to Andromeda, but it's nowhere near as easy as M31 is. It's really quite diffuse, and I've really only had good luck with this from the darkest skies, and it's not super impressive of a galaxy visually. It wasn't until we were getting to like 20-inch scopes in really dark skies where it starts to take on kind of the view, if you will, of M33. It tends to be easier for imaging, but imaging this in town is going to be difficult because because it's so diffuse that if you're getting really bad gratings from light pollution, it can be difficult to process that out and keep the nebula. I'm sure some of you experienced, like really well experienced processors can really get some good out of it. But you really got to know what you're doing if you're dealing with a gradient and imaging something like this, being that it's so diffuse. So something to think about. It can be a bit of a challenge. Your mileage may vary. Visually, though, it can be fun, but darker skies are going to be needed. And then, of course, rounding out the month, we have Orion. The Orion Nebula is like a staple this time of year. This is like the target that you go after all year, or all winter. It's easy. It can be challenging in its own right. It looks good in pretty much any telescope. You can see that it is a nebula in mostly any telescope, but it gets more interesting the more aperture you put on it. The darker the skies get, the wider the field of view. It can be a really interesting thing to go after. So highly recommend checking it out. But it could be a fun one to go after, especially if you're getting your first telescope. Imaging wise, this can be a challenge and it can be easy. Easy because you can get a really nice picture of this really, really quickly. It's got a lot of really nice color. But if you really want to do a deep dive like the shot you see here, this took a lot of work to do, because you have to understand how to bring out the faint details and not overexpose the core. Because if you're going to go deep, like seeing all the little wisps and stuff around it, the core, the center portion of Orion will blow out. Doesn't matter. It's going to blow out. So you need to work on taking shorter exposures and learning how to blend them into your longer exposures. And it's not terribly difficult to do, but it does take some learning on how to do it. And there's the way I've done it, and I'm sure there are way better ways to do it. I wouldn't say I'm a great processor. I've just kind of figured out how to hobble my way through it. But it is a balancing act, trying to control the core and not overexposing while getting all the really nice, elegant detail that's also in the region. So something there. But that's pretty much it. As far as target of the month, last month we did IC 5076. We're going to get those patches ready to go. So if you haven't received them, we just need to get it all together. And then your target of the month for December is going to be Sharpless 188. Nice thing about this is it's pretty much all hydrogen. So if you have a monochrome camera and an H-alpha filter, you can go to town on this thing. So I'll be really curious to see what everyone does, and see what you can find out there. But that's a really cool object to go with. But the kicker here is it is heavy in hydrogen, so it should be forgiving with filters. So something to think about. But that's pretty much it, guys, for December night skies. That also wraps up our night sky episodes for the year. So we'll be back in January to start it up all over again. For anybody doing TOTM, we will probably announce at the end of January, early February, the winners for this year. And of course, you'll get gift cards and stuff like that for our website to get stuff. But yeah, if you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe. Leave a like on the channel. If you want to support us more, you can head over to skywatcher.threadless.com and pick up some cool swag. And then, of course, if you really want to support us, you can head over to our website or your favorite dealer and pick up some of our equipment. Again, a lot of stuff on sale right now, so get it while you can. If you like what you see here, again, please go ahead and subscribe, leave a like. If you have an idea for an episode, email us at info@skywatcherusa.com and title it What's Up. Next week, we're talking about visual filters. We're revisiting that episode again, just checking it out, revising some of it because it does come up in questions quite a bit. So we're going to do a refresher episode for just visual filters, and that'll be next week. And that's another live episode. And then, yeah, that's pretty much wrapping it up for today. Thank you all for watching. If you like what you see here, again, please go ahead and subscribe, leave a like, and then we will see you guys here next Friday for another episode of the What's Up Webcast. So thanks very much. have a nice weekend, everyone. Stay warm out there. It's getting cold. And we will see you guys next Friday. So take care. See ya. Bye.